We kick off our 2024 NHL Draft profiles with defenseman Artam Levshunov, the Michigan State defenseman. Steven Ellis from the Daily Faceoff joins. We're going to talk about Leshunov's game, where he would fit, and if he could be the best defenseman in the draft class. So all that and more on today's episode.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at San Jose Hockey Now. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to start with our first draft profile. Steven Ellis from the Daily Faceoff joins, where we break down Artam Levshunov's game. We get to know this big Belarusian, that's a fun word to say, defenseman, and if he could kind of be the best defenseman in the draft class, where he'd fit in the Sharks pipeline, and if he could actually be playing pro hockey right now. So before we get into it with Steven, do want to let you guys know that today's episode, is brought to you guys by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And now we bring in Steven Ellis of the Daily Faceoff to kickstart our draft profile coverage. Your first one, buddy. I hope you're excited.
I am. I love talking hockey prospects. I guess that's important for me. That's my job. But we're going to talk about a good one today.
So we're going to be talking about one Artam Levshunov. So really quick, if you do not know who Artam Levshunov is, he is a defenseman playing for Michigan State in the NCAA, 6'2", 198 pounds. So far, as we're recording this on January 23rd, he's played 24 games, has 7 goals, 19 assists, with 58 shots on goal. Steven, I ask, what makes Leshunov such an intriguing prospect?
Well, with this year, there's so many good defensemen to tackle here. And I think when it comes to Levshunov's play, it's like he's about as complete of a player as it gets. Like, he could probably be playing pro hockey right now in arguably the NHL. Obviously the KHL probably too, for sure. But when you just look at the way he's got the size, he's 6'2", but he's like over 200 pounds, and he's not afraid to throw it around. He's very good offensively. I think he's over a point per game now at this point. So he's got the size, the skill, but he's really good defensively, which is actually really important because there's a lot of good blue liners in this draft class, but not a lot of guys who are good in their own zone. And it's hard to come up with a comparable for him because, first off, I hate comparables. But I think just, there's not, we don't get defensemen that are this well-rounded. Maybe Moritz Seider, but like he's not as big as Moritz Seider was. Maybe just the playing style, but he's physically, he's very strong, and he uses that to his advantage. He dominates players that way. So he's very confident. I know I talked to one scout who's like, he's confident, he's not cocky, he knows what he's capable of, doesn't try to do anything more than that, and sticks to his strengths. And those strengths are, again, good two-way play, physicality, and a great shot. So he's kind of everything you're looking for from a guy who could be a top pairing defenseman long-term.
So let's start with those strengths, right? You mentioned his kind of two-way game, and how impressive is that, especially for one, a guy of his age, and two, also doing this in the NCAA, which I think is, among kind of the prospects, I think is one of the tougher leagues to do this, especially when you're playing guys who might be 22, 23, 24 years old on a night in, night out basis. Let's start with that, with his kind of two-way game. Why is such a big part of it?
I think, he understands how to use that to his advantage, how to use his speed and skill to his advantage. I think with him, going and playing in Michigan State, where at the beginning of the season, it was some easier competition for him. And I felt that allowed him to ease in. It wasn't like he was playing like the University of Michigan or Boston College in his first game. Like, I don't remember who he played, but it was a couple of games where it's like, okay, this is
a couple cupcakes to kind of work yourself
exactly.
in. Yeah,
it was a perfect start to the schedule. And actually, it was the Lake Superior State University, and it was not like, it was pretty one-sided games. But it was kind of a while until I think it was like the end of October where they started playing against the Boston College Eagles, and those games were a bit more difficult, but I still thought he looked really good, and was probably one of the few guys that really stood out to me. As the season's gone on, he's gotten a lot better. I think, the being able to play against competition like that early, the coaching staff gave him those minutes, and he had a good goaltender behind him in Detroit Red Wings prospect Trey Augustine. And obviously we know with how good Michigan State's been this year, there's been so many good players, but with Leshunov, it's just like I think the fact that, like I mentioned, he's kind of pro ready the way he plays, where guys don't know how to get around him easily. He gets in their face, things like that. And the physicality part of it, it's something that a lot of players really struggle with when they try to get to the next level. I think like Luke Hughes was an example of a guy that had so much skill, but it took a little bit to figure out how to handle the physical game. With Levshunov, that was not a problem. And that type of physical ability has really helped, because you get older competition, you get stronger competition, you get guys that are looking to be turning pro in a few months. So that type of level of competition every single night. I know they only play 2 games a week basically, but I feel like that was huge for him, because he's been able, it wasn't overworked. The USHL schedule is way more demanding. I think it's like 20-ish more games last year, but he played so much as a rookie last year that he proved like, okay, yeah, he's ready to go here. And I think with just the way he's been able to adapt his physical game has been huge.
As he continues to kind of grow and develop and, eventually hopefully make the NHL, what do you think is going to be his one defining trait?
I want to say maybe just his physical play, and not necessarily like landing big hits, but just how he really just holds his own along the boards. Guy will come try to make a deke around him. He's not letting that happen. And because he's mobile, he's able to use that flexibility in him to get to where he needs to be, and then use his body to create everything from there. So that's kind of how I look at it.
And then, of course, he's growing, developing. What's the one thing that you want to see him continue to work on as he gets ready to make those next steps?
I think there's a few times where I question some of his decision making. Like, I'd say he's still, again, as close to being like as good of an overall defenseman as you're going to find in this class, because there's a lot of good young defensemen that don't really play a lot of defense. And I think that's, as stupid as that sounds, like that's kind of just been the reality of the last couple of years. Like guys like Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes who could do that two-way game, there's a reason, like in Adam Fox, like guys like that, there's a reason they're at the top of the tops, because few guys could do what they're able to do and still produce the offense they do. With Leshunov, I think that it's still just making the right decision at the right time. Sometimes he'll get a little fancy with the puck when he doesn't need to. He just needs to keep things simple. And I think because he's so good with the puck, he tries to rely on himself too much and won't always use his teammates. I feel like he's gone better throughout the year on that, but that's still something where at least when he turns pro, we'll take some guidance.
And I mean, that sounds like a reps thing, right? And, especially kind of these star prospects, you had to be the one, the guy, right? Usually on your kind of junior teams and kind of working your way up. And that's usually a reps thing, learning to like actually utilize your teammates instead of just doing everything on your own, because you've been able to do everything on your own for years. And so, yeah, that doesn't worry me. And again, like our good friend Hattie always says, you want them to kind of experiment with the creativity at this age. That way they can kind of, as they continue to grow on, you can kind of figure out what I can and can't get away with. And that way you're not getting to the NHL and going, oh, I can't do this anymore type of things. So, yeah,
it's like you look at him like he was 2 years ago, he was playing Belarus under 18 hockey. And like, that's not a high level of hockey. And I think it was like 15, 16-year-old playing Division 1A at the World Juniors. Like that's a lot of responsibility. And he was playing top line minutes. So he's always been the best. And I think part of that was like, he was so physically advanced that guys in Belarus, like they don't produce a ton of hockey talent, but he just was so far ahead. So when he went to the USHL, it was like, okay, let's see what he could do. And oh my God, he was the real deal of the Green Bay Gamblers. So I think everything we've just kind of seen there is just like, a guy that's always been the number one guy, but he continues to just improve on that. I think one example of where that could be maybe a downside is Cole Yzerman. I know a lot of I'm still really high on him, and I'm writing an article about him. And I think the thing with him is he's always been the star all the time.
Yep.
But then defensively, he can just fall apart, do nothing, lack completely. So I think with him, it's like it almost like he needs to be in a spot where he isn't the star anymore to kind of figure out the more well-rounded side of the games. Where for Levshunov, he's been the star, but he had to do a lot in areas like in growing up in the Belarus junior system where he had to do so much of that. And I think that ability to learn the two-way game to be a more effective all-around defenseman is huge.
Before we continue with Steven, we get to know more Levshunov's game, where his kind of projection would be if he could be playing pro hockey here right away, or if he's going to go back to Michigan State next year. Just want to take a quick break here. The NFL season may be over, but there's still plenty of time to get in the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. It's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is super easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet. They have live same-game parlays, so maybe you think this weekend Brock Purdy starts to go off. You can maybe bet the over on yards or touchdowns, whatever he's doing. You can also find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. Find the best ways to find popular parlays. I really love an Ayuk touchdown, especially if Debo is a little banged up with a Niners win this weekend. That's my favorite bet of the weekend. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right. Assuming the Sharks, if they don't get, the first overall pick, which we all know is going to be Macklin Celebrini, if they're that 2, 3, 4 spot, and they do draft Leshunov, because again, I think they're still missing a big piece on their blue line prospect pool. Where would he fit in with their prospects? Would he be the #1 defensive prospect over Mukamadulin? Where would he kind of fit in the Sharks? Even comparing to maybe guys like Will Smith and Quentin Musty, where would you kind of put him in that pool?
I'd probably maybe put a #2 overall behind Will Smith, because I'm a huge believer in Will Smith, but he'd be the #1 defenseman for sure. Just, he's just like everything he does is just smart for the most part, outside of some of his puck decisions. But it's just like the way he plays, it's so well-rounded. And, Mukamadulin, I remember watching him in his draft year and thinking, like, this might be the dumbest prospect I've ever watched in terms of just decision-making. I'm like, I didn't understand. He's improved significantly since then.
Very much, yes.
I'm not, I don't think it's in the same class in terms of Levshunov. It's like, for me, I have him as my 6th ranked prospect, and I think that's the 2nd ranked defensive prospect, but it can go a lot of ways. Like Sam Dickinson is a 6'3" monster in London, and obviously watch Casper Haltonen play this year. You've probably seen Sam Dickinson, what he could do.
I have.
Passing to Casper Haltonen often on the power play. But then you go look and, Zane Parekh might put up 30 goals and 100 points this year in Saginaw. So there's a lot of good other options. But in terms of just the complete package, Levshunov is one of the best defensemen that you're going to find.
All right. I know you kind of mentioned he might be also pro ready. There's always kind of the dealing with NCAA prospects, right? Because it's once you sign them, they can't go back type of situation. How long do you think? It's probably another year at Michigan State, and then it's probably a year in the AHL. How do you kind of see his timeline before he's making the NHL and then making an impact in the NHL?
I wouldn't be surprised if he turns pro this year. I don't know I think it's still when I've come to watching college prospects, I feel like you got to wait till like the very end of the season to make a very good read on what's going on. Even like a guy like Cutter Gauthier last year, where Levshunov, I wouldn't like, he could probably play in the AHL next year and thrive. But at the same time, it's, getting a chance at a national championship is big, and Michigan State should be good for the next couple of years. If he takes one more year, gets a chance to be part of a winning culture there, that's not a bad thing. And he's still getting the reps. Again, I think the biggest downside about college is you don't play a ton of games, but you're playing against old competition. You're not getting drowned out from going from 35 games played to a full AHL slate type thing. And I think it's just like, I would like to see him play pro, but I feel like there's a lot of benefits in keeping him in college for one more year if Michigan State's going to be as competitive as we know they can be, especially Trey Augustine, one of the best goalie prospects in the world there. And I know they got some good guys coming along, and I would like to see him stick around.
Yeah, it makes sense. And especially with the Sharks, I mean, you've seen Mike Greer, and even before then, actually really since Mike Greer has been very patient with his prospects and wanting, he uses the term over-ripen, making sure that they're ready to go. And with, that winning culture thing, because we know right now the Barracuda and the Sharks don't have much winning going on. So it's good to kind of, for a guy like him to kind of to do that. So, before we kind of continue, look at the actual bigger thoughts about the 2024 draft. Where do you kind of picture an actual range? We'll get to the actual where do you think he's going to go, but where do you think is a realistic range? We know Bob McKenzie put out his rankings, and I know the Bob Father is not the say all be all, but he's usually pretty good at this and has him at rank 3 right now at the midterms. Where do you see a realistic range for Leshunov?
I'd say listen to what Bob says. I'll say he's
very good at this.
His list isn't his own personal rankings. It's what the actual scouts are thinking, and that's pretty telling. Kind of same thing with the Hockey News Draft. I know I'm plugging all the competitors, but the Hockey News Draft Guide, it's kind of another one where that's what the scouts are thinking. And Corey Proman does the draft day. It's like when he puts out his mock draft on draft day, that's what the draft order is going to be. I think it's so wide open though in terms of honestly, second till about 7th or 8th. Like I haven't Demidov second because I think just the star power, the potential for him to be another Kirill Kaprizov style talent is very real. Mm-hmm. But then you got Cole Eiserman, who's got on pace for 75 goals this year, more than Cole Caulfield, more than Austin Matthews, guys like that. Konstantinos, a very good two-way player out of Finland. And then Anton Silyev, a Russian defenseman who's 6'7". Some places have put him at 6'8", but 6'7" that could skate, move, and everything. It's he does everything. It's a Victor Hedman style guy that the ceiling is so high. Literally, it has to be because he's so tall. But just in general, it's a guy like that's interesting. I think we're looking at realistically the 3 to about 6 spot. Mm-hmm. I've seen some places put him as 8th or 9th. I don't think that's fair.
Makes sense, and especially if we've seen Mike Greer kind of the way, other than Luca Cagnoni, but we've kind of seen him gravitate towards these defensemen who can do both, kind of be both two-way players. Luca Cagnoni, I know, is plays pretty well, especially for a 5'9" defenseman, and he's not afraid of the physicality. But Luca Cagnoni is known for his offensive ability, and I think if the Sharks are in a position to get a guy like Artam Levshunov, I think Mike Greer is going to think really long and hard about a guy like that, because I think that can kind of be that, as he's really worked to kind of fix this blue line pipeline. I think this could be kind of his crown jewel. And then you put him with a guy like Muka Madulin, who can maybe slide into your 3 spot. You're probably feeling really good about where the defensive prospects are going forward for San Jose. So before we finish up with Steven, we get some of his thoughts on the 2024 draft class and what he's looking for going into the second half of the hockey season. I just need to take a quick break. We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data. A matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, searching, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So join the more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. All you have to do, just go go to Indeed.com/lockedon, and you'll get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Let's talk about the 2024 draft as a whole. And I know we're still several months out, but it's Macklin Celebrini's world, and we're all living in it, right?
Yeah, it's not even close. It's like when I remember writing in the summer, and it's like, okay, Celebrini is number one. I enjoy watching Yzerman more because I like seeing guys who score a lot of goals, but Celebrini does a lot of that too. Celebrini does a lot of that too, and we saw like the World Juniors. He was, I know the Lassie and Mitch Brown from Elite Prospects, they're doing hand tracking stats, and Celebrini was like the number one in game score the whole tournament long, but Canada didn't make it that far, so hard to give him any votes for MVP, but played like an MVP the way he was out there. But yeah, it's Celebrini is awesome. Just we could just announce that he's the first overall pick now, which is finding out which team is taking him.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched, for personal reasons, I've watched a fair amount of Boston University games, and I think the thing that surprises me with him is how physical he is, especially for someone who's 5'11", 17 years old, playing against other like college players, and because you always worry about that, especially like, well, he's kind of small at 5'11". It's like, the dude's like super physical, and he's not afraid to get, but he also combines that physicality with like just like oozes skill. And yeah, if the Sharks, if Gary Bettman is going to rig the lottery, this is the year to rig the lottery for the Sharks, because nobody's going to question it if you're rigging it for Celebrini compared to Bedard. That makes too much sense. So yes, let's just hope, pray to the hockey gods that the Sharks can actually pull this off. But we know that after Celebrini, though, it's such a huge, wide open kind of. So who are some of the guys that you're looking at to maybe kind of make a rise here as we kind of enter the second half and get ready for playoffs and all that? So I know you kind of mentioned Cole Yzerman, who's got a bunch of questions and has been dropped, but which guys are you kind of looking at to make a big jump here?
So I have Yzerman at number 3, and I'm still sticking to it. I still think that the teams that are passing on him are passing on a 50-goal scorer. That's what that is. I have Demidov. Again, I mentioned him. He's we saw Matvei Michkov last year and all the hype around him, and there's a lot of people who still think Demidov might be the better player. He had to come back from an injury this year, and
yes,
I feel like some people have kind of underrated him, but it's like his numbers are still great. He's producing at 1.5 points per game in the MHL, which the MHL, you look at the goalie stats a lot, and they're like, oh, this goalie is the 10th best goalie in the league, and he's got a .935 save percentage. It's like it's sometimes hard to get a good reading of Russian junior hockey, but he can turn into a hero, and guys like that are a lot of fun to watch. Again, Consolanius, I think the World Juniors was a really good showing for him. He didn't produce a lot of points, but he was generating chances. He was working as hard as anyone and did not get the numbers that he deserved. I thought he was outstanding for Finland. Obviously, Saliev, another one. Leshunov, Sam Dickinson, I mentioned him earlier, 6'3", and he plays. I think right now there's no defenseman that's gotten more points than him since like December. I think he's producing at a 2 point per game average right now, like looking great. The name that I'm going to have to bring up though that people are continuously underrating is Berkeley Catton. Remember Zach Benson last year? Remember how many points he put up?
I did love me some Zach Benson last year.
If you like Zach Benson, you're going to love Berkeley Catton. It's just another guy that just puts a ton of points on the board and just does it consistently. Like the Hlinka Gretzky was a superstar, 8 goals in that tournament. That you're getting a play driver who could do a bit of everything. You're not going to be disappointed if you take him. So those are the guys I'm keeping the closest eye on.
One guy I wanted to quickly ask you about, because with these Sharks, circling that Penguins pick, which is looking better and better each day. Adam Urich, who I know he's dealing with an injury, is probably going to be out for the rest of the year, but before his injury, where did you kind of have him ranked? And then like where are you kind of seeing him? Because he's going to fall because of his injury, but where do you kind of see his future?
Yeah, I had Urich in around the top 10 originally. This season's not been good for him, though. He's in the Czech league. He hasn't looked that great. Hlinka Gretzky was fine. I'd say closer to solid than fine, actually. And I think the big thing for him was just not being able to produce a lot in the Czech league. And that's not necessarily a huge knock against him because it is pro hockey. It's not easy for a 17-year-old to do that. But it just didn't feel like it felt like he was too nervous all the time. He'd get the puck, and when in the past, he would be able to shoot it. And like Czech junior teams, like he will go out there and produce things from the points, take good shots, played a lot like his brother, David Urich, the Blue Jackets defenseman. It just wasn't showing it on a consistent basis. I was a little concerned. right now I have him at 19. I think he is going to probably fall a little farther than that, but kind of like who's the finish? Aaron Kiviariu, another guy that had such a good start to the season and had so much raw talent that it's going to be just like, I think the team that takes him is going to get a high reward option there. It's just how does he bounce back next year is the question.
All right, Steven, I know this is your first time doing a draft profile, but at Locked On Sharks, we ask 2 blood oath questions. I don't know if you know this, but I got your blood. Don't ask. I have my ways. So question number 1, after Macklin Celebrini, I'm going to keep him out of this like we did with Connor Bedard last year. 5 years from now, who's the best player in the draft not named Macklin Celebrini?
Consta Helenius. And I just think that this is a guy that reads the play as well as he does, of the hockey IQ he does. It's only a matter of time for the offense to follow, but he's been so above his peers every single time I've watched him that I like Consta Helenius a lot. He's going to be like a much better Anton Lundell if I had to put a prediction down.
All right. And then where, I know, again, this is very mean asking in January where someone's going to end up in the draft, but where does Artam Levshunov get picked?
I'm going to go number 6. I think that
number 6.
Yeah. And there's an argument to be made. He'd be the first defenseman taken last year.
Yep.
And definitely number 1 next year. I think it's just this year. It's just so deep. And picking between him and Silyev and Sam Dickinson, I would not want to be the team having to make that decision.
All right. That's fair. As the January 23rd, you're a Buffalo Sabre. So
sure, there you go. Buffalo Sabres, get him out there with the defense they got. It might be actually pretty interesting.
That's just stack on stack on stack. Awesome young defenseman. So Steven, you said it all. I'm sure we'll have you back on multiple times between now and the draft to continue to break down prospects. Where can the people find you, buddy?
Well, first off, San Jose Sharks fans are awesome on Twitter. They are very passionate. I'm very excited to see that they are so excited about prospects. It's great.
It's all we have. That and William Eklund. It's all we have right now.
Hey, and it is what it is. I was kind of pulling for the team to just never win a game this year, to be honest, because it would have been, a great story, but B, would have made getting Celebrini even sweeter. Twitter, SLS Hockey. All my draft stuff goes on dailyfaceoff.com, and lots of content. A lot of the CHL Top Prospects games coming up this week. I'll be doing some deep stuff on that. So maybe you're a Berkeley Cat fan. Maybe you want to find out how he's doing, and that's I'll be having some notes on him. So lots of content coming up. All
right. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk again soon.
Yep. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the first of many draft profiles coming here on Locked On Sharks. If the Sharks don't win the draft lottery and they end up in that 2-3-4 spot, I think Mike Grier is going to think really long and hard about a guy like Leshunov, who I think kind of fits the bill of being a potential number 1 defenseman who can be both an offensive generator and a shutdown defenseman, that kind of blend of a two-way player. So really excited about Leshunov and the way he's been playing, especially again playing in the NCAA. I still think that the Sharks would probably send him back for another season. But I mean, you could be looking at him and Muka Madulin kind of being the future of the Sharks blue line for years to come. So again, it's going to be the first of many. We'll have another one next week as well. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to look at some potential trade. Again, maybe if Mike Grier wanted to be aggressive and try to acquire some guys who he thinks could help out the Sharks with their rebuild. So we're going to look at some of the kind of the big names out there and if they make sense for San Jose to be in on that. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Until tomorrow, bye, friends.